The steam rose from the industrial-sized pots as Sarah Martinez wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. The Army mess hall at Fort Braxton was alive with the familiar sounds of clanking metal, sizzling pans, and the constant hum of conversation from soldiers waiting in line. It was 0530 hours, and breakfast service was in full swing. Sarah had been working in the mess hall for 8 months now, ever since she'd been transferred from her previous assignment in communications. The transfer hadn't been her choice, but she'd learned to make the best of it. There was something honest about feeding people, something that reminded her why she'd joined the military in the first place, to serve others. She moved efficiently between the serving stations, her dark hair pulled back in regulation style, her uniform crisp despite the heat from the kitchen. The other kitchen staff had grown to respect her work ethic. She never complained, never asked for special treatment, and always volunteered for the early morning shifts that others tried to avoid. "Martinez, we need more scrambled eggs on Station 3, called out Sergeant Peterson, the mess hall supervisor. His voice carried the authority of someone who'd been running military kitchens for 15 years. "On it, Sergeant," Sarah replied, grabbing a fresh tray of eggs from the warming station. As she walked past the serving line, she caught snippets of conversation from the soldiers getting their breakfast. Most were discussing the upcoming training exercises, others complained about the early hour, and a few were making plans for weekend leave. Sarah had her own plans for the weekend. Her younger brother Miguel was graduating from high school back in Phoenix, and she'd managed to get a 3-day pass to attend the ceremony. It would be the first time she'd been home in over a year, and she was looking forward to seeing her family again. The mess hall served nearly 800 soldiers across 3 meal periods each day. Breakfast was always the busiest, with soldiers rushing to fuel up before morning PT or heading out to various training locations across the sprawling military base. Sarah had memorized the rhythm of it all, the way the line moved fastest between 0545 and 0630, how Specialist Rodriguez always asked for extra bacon, and which officers preferred their coffee black versus with cream. As she refilled the egg station, Sarah noticed the usual morning crowd filing through. There were the new recruits, still trying to figure out military life, their uniforms too crisp, and their movements uncertain. The seasoned enlisted personnel moved with practiced efficiency, knowing exactly what they wanted and how to get it quickly. The NCOs clustered together at their preferred tables, discussing the day's training schedule over their coffee. "You know, Martinez," said Private First Class Jackson as he held out his tray, "you make the best breakfast potatoes on this whole base. My grandmother would be jealous." Sarah smiled at the compliment. "Just follow the recipe, Jackson. Nothing special about it." "Nah, there's definitely something special," he insisted. "Maybe it's the secret ingredient." "What secret ingredient?" "Care," he said with a grin before moving on to the next station. The comment made Sarah pause for a moment. She hadn't thought about it that way, but maybe Jackson was right. She did care about the food she served, about making sure the soldiers got a good meal to start their day. It wasn't glamorous work, but it mattered. As the morning rush began to slow down around 0700, Sarah started her usual cleanup routine. She wiped down the serving stations, refilled the coffee urns, and helped the other kitchen staff prepare for the lunch service that would begin in a few hours. The repetitive nature of the work was oddly comforting. In a world where military life could be unpredictable, the mess hall provided a constant, 3 meals a day, every day, no matter what. "Martinez, you've got visitors," Sergeant Peterson called out from behind the serving line. Sarah looked up to see her friend Maria Gonzalez walking toward the kitchen area. Maria worked in the base communications center and had been one of the first people to befriend Sarah when she'd arrived at Fort Braxton. "Hey girl, you look like you could use a break," Maria said, leaning against the stainless steel counter that separated the kitchen from the dining area. "Just finished the breakfast rush. What brings you to my humble kitchen?" "Humble? This place feeds half the base." "That's not humble, that's essential." Maria gestured toward the now mostly empty dining area. "Besides, I wanted to ask if you're still going home for your brother's graduation." "Absolutely. I've been looking forward to it for months. Miguel's the first person in our family to graduate high school. My mom's planning this huge celebration." "That's amazing. I'm happy for you guys." Maria paused, seeming to consider something. "You know, you should be proud of yourself too. You're serving your country, supporting your family, and you're doing it all with such grace." Sarah felt a flush of warmth at her friend's words. Sometimes it was easy to forget the bigger picture when you were focused on the daily grind of military life. "Thanks, Maria. That means a lot. I'm serious. You've been through so much, and you never let it show." You just keep moving forward, taking care of everyone around you. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the lunch prep crew. Sarah glanced at her watch and realized her shift was nearly over. She had planned to spend the afternoon writing letters home and maybe getting some exercise at the base gym. I should let you get ready for lunch service, Maria said. But, hey, let's get together when you get back from Phoenix. I want to hear all about the graduation. After Maria left, Sarah finished her cleanup duties and headed to the locker room to change out of her kitchen uniform. As she removed her apron, she caught sight of her reflection in the small mirror mounted on the locker door. She looked tired, but there was something else in her expression, a quiet determination that had carried her through countless challenges. The tattoo on her left shoulder was partially visible through her undershirt. It was a small but intricate design that told a story she rarely shared with anyone. Most people assumed it was just decorative, but for Sarah, it represented something much deeper, a reminder of where she'd come from and what she'd overcome to get where she was today. She had gotten the tattoo 2 years ago, shortly after her father's funeral. It incorporated elements that represented her Mexican heritage, a small eagle perched on a cactus flower, with delicate script beneath it that read Siempre Adelante, always forward. The design also included a small cross, honoring her father's faith, and a tiny star that represented her dreams for the future. Sarah's father had been a mechanic who worked 2 jobs to support their family. He'd never had the opportunity to serve in the military himself, but he'd always spoken with respect about those who chose that path. When Sarah had told him she was enlisting, he'd been proud, but worried. Mija, he'd said, you have a good heart, but the world can be hard on people like us. You remember who you are, no matter where you go. The tattoo was her way of keeping that promise. Every morning when she got dressed, she saw it in the mirror and remembered her father's words. It gave her strength on the difficult days and kept her grounded when military life threatened to overwhelm her sense of identity. As she walked across the base toward her barracks, Sarah reflected on how much her life had changed since joining the Army. She'd grown up in a small neighborhood in Phoenix where opportunities were limited and many young people struggled to find their path. The military had offered her a chance to see the world, learn new skills, and serve something greater than herself. It hadn't always been easy. Basic training had been physically and mentally challenging, pushing her beyond what she thought were her limits. Her first assignment had been in Germany, where she'd worked in communications and learned to navigate military culture as a young Latina woman. She'd faced her share of discrimination and had to work twice as hard as some of her peers to prove herself. The transfer to Fort Braxton had been disappointing at first. Going from the technical challenges of communications work to serving food in a mess hall had felt like a step backward. But Sarah had learned to find purpose in her new role. She took pride in the quality of the meals she helped prepare and in the small ways she could brighten a soldier's day. Her barracks room was small, but comfortable. Sarah had decorated it with photos of her family and a few mementos from her travels. On her desk sat a framed picture from her brother Miguel's 16th birthday party. In the photo, Miguel was grinning widely, his arm around Sarah's shoulders. She'd been home on leave for the celebration, and seeing how proud he was to introduce her to his friends as my sister, the soldier, had meant everything to her. Miguel had always been special to their family. Born when Sarah was already 8 years old, he'd been like a little shadow following her around as they grew up. Their parents had worked long hours, so Sarah had often been responsible for helping with his homework, making sure he got to school on time, and keeping him out of trouble in their neighborhood. When Sarah left for basic training, Miguel had been 13 and struggling with their father's declining health. Their dad had developed diabetes complications that made it difficult for him to work as much as he used to. The family's financial situation became precarious, and Sarah's military pay became an important source of support for the household. She sent money home every month, carefully budgeting her soldier's salary to make sure she could help with Miguel's school expenses and their father's medical bills. It wasn't always easy living on what remained, but Sarah had learned to be resourceful. She bought her personal items at the PX, took advantage of free recreation activities on base, and rarely spent money on entertainment off base. The sacrifice had been worth it when she received word that Miguel was not only graduating on time, but had been accepted to community college with a partial scholarship. He planned to study automotive technology, following somewhat in their father's footsteps, but with better opportunities for advancement. As evening approached, Sarah made her way to the base library to use the computers. She wanted to video call her family and finalize the details for her upcoming trip home. The library was quiet, with just a few soldiers studying or using the internet to stay connected with their loved ones. Her mother's face appeared on the screen, and Sarah felt the familiar pang of homesickness that came with these calls. Elena Martinez looked older than her 52 years, the result of years of hard work and worry, but her smile was as warm as ever. Mija, how are you? Are you eating enough? You look thin. Sarah laughed. Mama, I work in a kitchen. I'm definitely eating enough. How's Miguel? Is he nervous about graduation? He's trying to act cool, but I can tell he's excited. He keeps asking when your plane arrives. He wants to introduce you to his girlfriend. Girlfriend? When did this happen? Her name is Rosa. She's a sweet girl, very smart. She's also going to the community college in the fall, studying to be a nurse. They talked for nearly an hour, catching up on family news and neighborhood gossip. Sarah's mother told her about the graduation party she was planning. Just family and close friends, but she was determined to make it special. She'd been saving money for months to buy Miguel a new laptop for college, and Sarah's father's brother had promised to provide the music and decorations. Your tia Carmen keeps asking when you're going to bring home a nice soldier boy for us to meet, her mother said with a mischievous grin. Mama, please. I'm focused on my career right now. Romance can wait. You're 26, Sarah? Life is short, and happiness is important too. Sarah knew her mother worried about her being alone, but the truth was that Sarah hadn't met anyone who seemed worth the complications that military relationships could bring. She'd seen too many couples struggle with deployments, transfers, and the demands of military life. For now, she was content to focus on her family and her service. After ending the call, Sarah walked back to her barracks as the sun was setting over Fort Braxton. The base had a different energy in the evening, quieter, more relaxed. Soldiers returning from training exercises or finishing up their duty shifts moved at a more leisurely pace. The sound of laughter drifted from the recreation center, where a group was playing volleyball on the outdoor court. Sarah's roommate, Specialist Kim Park, was already in bed reading when she returned to their room. Kim worked in the base medical clinic and often had early morning shifts that required her to be asleep by 2,100 hours. How was your day? Kim asked, looking up from her book. Good. Busy breakfast service, but nothing out of the ordinary. I talked to my family about the graduation trip. That's this weekend, right? I'm excited for you. Family milestones are so important. Kim understood the importance of family. She'd grown up in a Korean-American household in California where education and family honor were paramount. Her parents had been initially disappointed when she chose military service over college, but they'd come to respect her decision when they saw how it had helped her mature and gain direction in life. Thanks. I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone. It's been too long. As Sarah prepared for bed, she thought about the next day's schedule. It would be another early morning in the mess hall, another day of serving hundreds of soldiers, another day of the routine that had become her life. But in just 2 more days, she'd be on a plane to Phoenix, heading home to celebrate her brother's achievement and spend time with the people who mattered most to her. She set her alarm for 0430, allowing herself enough time to shower and grab a quick breakfast before her 0500 shift began. Tomorrow would bring the usual challenges, ensuring the food was prepared correctly, managing the flow of soldiers through the serving line, and maintaining the high standards that Sergeant Peterson expected from his kitchen staff. But tomorrow would also bring her one day closer to home, one day closer to seeing Miguel walk across that graduation stage, one day closer to the pride and joy that would make all the long days and hard work feel worthwhile. As she drifted off to sleep, Sarah smiled at the thought of her brother's face when he spotted her in the graduation audience, wearing her dress blue uniform with pride. The next morning arrived with the familiar sound of reveille echoing across Fort Braxton at 0500 hours. Sarah was already awake, having learned to wake up a few minutes before her alarm to avoid the jarring sound that could wake her roommate. She moved quietly through her morning routine, gathering her uniform and toiletries before heading to the communal bathroom down the hall. The base was coming alive around her as she walked to the mess hall. Early morning PT formations were gathering on the parade ground, their instructors calling out commands that carried on the crisp air. Security personnel were conducting their shift change, and delivery trucks were beginning to arrive at various buildings around the installation. Sarah loved this time of day. There was something peaceful about the early morning hours before the full chaos of military life took over. The sky was just beginning to lighten, and she could see stars fading in the distance. It reminded her of the early mornings in Phoenix when her father would leave for his first job, how he'd always pause to look at the sky and take a deep breath before starting his day. "Morning, Martinez," called out Corporal Stevens as she entered the mess hall through the staff entrance. Stevens worked the night shift in the kitchen, responsible for bread baking and some of the prep work for breakfast service. "Morning, Stevens. How did the night go?" "Smooth as always. Got the bread finished an hour ago, and the prep for the breakfast potatoes is done. Coffee's been brewing since 04:30. Sarah appreciated Stevens' reliability. The night shift kitchen work was often thankless, working alone for hours while the rest of the base slept, but the morning meal service depended on that preparation. She made a mental note to mention Stevens' consistent good work to Sergeant Peterson. The kitchen came alive quickly as the rest of the morning crew arrived. Sergeant Peterson arrived precisely at 0515, as he did every morning, reviewing the meal plan and checking the prep work that had been completed overnight. He was a methodical man who ran the mess hall with military precision, but Sarah had learned that he genuinely cared about both the quality of the food and the welfare of his staff. "Martinez, you're on the main serving line today," Peterson announced as he reviewed his clipboard. "We're expecting a larger than usual breakfast crowd. The 2nd Battalion is heading out for field exercises right after morning chow, so they'll all be coming through between 0530 and 0630. "Understood, Sergeant. I'll make sure the line moves efficiently." Sarah took her position behind the main serving counter, where she'd be responsible for portioning out the hot entrees, scrambled eggs, breakfast sausages, and hash browns. It was one of the busiest positions in the serving line, requiring quick hands and good portion control to ensure that every soldier got a fair serving while keeping the line moving. The first wave of soldiers began arriving at 0530 sharp. Sarah fell into the familiar rhythm of serving, her movements automatic as she scooped portions onto each extended tray. She'd learned to read the soldiers' faces and energy levels, adjusting her serving style accordingly. The new recruits who looked nervous got an encouraging smile and a slightly larger portion. The gruff sergeants who appeared before their morning coffee got quick, efficient service with minimal conversation. "Good morning, Martinez," said Lieutenant Williams as he reached her station. Williams was one of the few officers who made an effort to learn the names of enlisted personnel outside his direct command. "How's the family?" "Very well, sir. My little brother graduates high school this weekend." "That's fantastic. You must be proud." "Very much so, sir. Thank you for asking." These small interactions made the repetitive work more meaningful. Sarah realized that she was more than just someone serving food. She was often one of the first faces soldiers saw each day, and her attitude could influence how their day began. She took that responsibility seriously. Around 0600, as the breakfast rush was reaching its peak, Sarah noticed some commotion near the entrance to the dining area. A group of senior officers had entered, including some she didn't recognize. It wasn't unusual for visiting officers to eat in the enlisted mess hall. It was considered good leadership to share meals with the troops, but this group had an air of importance that suggested high rank. Sergeant Peterson noticed them too, and quickly moved to ensure they were properly welcomed. Sarah continued serving, but she could see him speaking with the senior-most officer, a man with closely cropped gray hair and more ribbons on his chest than she could count from her position. "That's General Harrison," whispered Private Johnson as he reached Sarah's station. "He's the new post commander. Word is he likes to make surprise visits to see how things really run around here." Sarah had heard about General Harrison's appointment, but hadn't expected to see him in the mess hall so soon. She focused on her work, making sure every tray she served met the high standards that would reflect well on Peterson's operation. As the officers moved through the serving line, Sarah could feel the energy in the kitchen change. Everyone was more alert, more careful with their movements and presentation. This was exactly the kind of inspection that could make or break a mess hall's reputation. When General Harrison reached Sarah's station, she maintained her professional demeanor, looking directly at him as she spoke. "Good morning, sir. What would you prefer this morning?" "I'll take the full breakfast, soldier. And thank you for asking." As Sarah served his eggs and sausages, she noticed that the general was actually paying attention to the operation, observing portion sizes, noting the temperature of the food, and watching how the staff interacted with the soldiers they served. This wasn't just a photo opportunity. He was conducting a genuine assessment. "This food looks excellent," the general commented as Sarah added hash browns to his tray. "How long have you been working in food service?" 8 months here at Fort Braxton, sir. I transferred from communications." And you enjoy the work? Very much, sir. It's an honor to serve the troops. The general nodded and moved on to the next station, but Sarah could tell he'd been genuinely interested in her answer. As the group of officers found seats in the dining area, she noticed that General Harrison continued to observe the operation while he ate. About 20 minutes later, as Sarah was refilling the serving trays during a brief lull in the breakfast rush, Sergeant Peterson approached her station. Martinez, General Harrison wants to speak with you. Sarah felt a moment of panic. Had she done something wrong? Said something inappropriate? Is there a problem, Sergeant? I don't think so. Just go see what he wants. Sarah removed her serving gloves and walked over to the table where General Harrison was finishing his breakfast. Up close, she could see that he was probably in his late 50s, with kind but sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. You wanted to see me, sir? Yes, please sit down for a moment. He gestured to the chair across from him. I wanted to compliment you on your professionalism this morning. You handle yourself very well under pressure. Thank you, sir. Sergeant Peterson runs an excellent operation here. He does indeed. Tell me about your background. Peterson mentioned you transferred from communications. That's quite a change. Sarah gave him a brief overview of her military service, her previous assignment in Germany, and her current role in the mess hall. She was careful to remain professional while still showing her genuine enthusiasm for her work. You mentioned family during the serving line. Are they military as well? No, sir. My parents were both civilians. My younger brother just finished high school. I'm hoping to attend his graduation this weekend. That's important. Family connections keep us grounded. The general paused, seeming to consider something. You know, I've been reviewing personnel files since I took command here. There are a lot of talented soldiers whose skills might not be fully utilized in their current positions. Sarah wasn't sure how to respond to that, so she simply nodded. I believe in recognizing potential when I see it. Would you be interested in opportunities for additional training or different assignments? I'm always interested in serving wherever I'm needed most, sir. Good answer. I'll be speaking with your chain of command about some possibilities. In the meantime, keep up the excellent work here. Thank you, sir. As Sarah returned to her serving station, her mind was racing. What had the general seen that prompted his interest? She'd simply been doing her job the same way she did every day. She tried to focus on the remaining breakfast service, but she couldn't help wondering what kinds of opportunities he might have in mind. The rest of the breakfast service passed without incident. As the dining area emptied and the kitchen staff began their cleaning routine, Sergeant Peterson called Sarah aside. What did the general want to talk to you about? Sarah recounted the conversation, noting Peterson's thoughtful expression as she spoke. That's interesting. General Harrison has a reputation for identifying talent and developing soldiers' careers. If he's taken notice of you, that could be very good news. I hope I didn't say anything inappropriate. From what I observed, you handled yourself perfectly. You were professional, respectful, and genuine. Those are exactly the qualities good leaders look for. As Sarah finished her morning cleanup duties, she found herself thinking about the unexpected encounter. She'd always tried to do her best work regardless of who was watching, but having that effort recognized by such a senior officer was both exciting and intimidating. Her phone buzzed with a text message from her brother Miguel. 2 more days until graduation. I can't wait to see you in your uniform. Rosa wants to meet you too. Love you, sis. The message brought Sarah back to what was most important to her, her family, and the reason she served. Whatever opportunities General Harrison might have in mind could wait until after she'd celebrated this milestone with Miguel. Some things were more important than career advancement. The afternoon passed quietly. Sarah spent some time in the base library researching travel options for her weekend trip and confirming her flight details. She also used the time to write a letter to her parents, something she tried to do at least once a week despite the availability of email and video calls. Writing letters by hand was something her father had encouraged when she first joined the army. Mija, he'd said, computers can break and phones can fail, but a letter written with your own hand carries something special. It shows you took time to think about your words. Sarah wrote about her daily routine, her friends on base, and her excitement about coming home for the graduation. She mentioned the encounter with General Harrison, but downplayed its significance, knowing her parents would worry if they thought she might be transferred again so soon. That evening, she met Maria for dinner at the base food court, a more casual dining option that served pizza, burgers, and other fast food. It was a popular gathering place for soldiers to relax after duty hours. You look like you've got something on your mind, Maria observed as they found a table away from the crowds. Sarah told her about the morning's events, from the general's surprise visit to the conversation they'd had afterward. Wow, that's amazing. Do you have any idea what kind of opportunities he might be thinking about? None at all. He just said something about soldiers whose skills might not be fully utilized in their current positions. Well, you do have a communications background, and you've proven yourself in food service. Maybe he's thinking about logistics or personnel management. Those skills transfer to a lot of different fields. They speculated about possibilities while sharing a pizza, but Sarah found herself more focused on her upcoming trip home than on potential career changes. The graduation ceremony was in just 2 days, and she still needed to pack and make sure her dress blue uniform was ready for the occasion. Are you nervous about going home? Maria asked, seeming to sense where Sarah's thoughts were. A little. It's been so long since I've been there, and sometimes I worry that I've changed too much. Military life changes you, you know? Of course it does. But change isn't always bad. You've grown, learned new things, become more confident. Your family will see that and be proud. I hope so. Sometimes I feel caught between two worlds, the person I was growing up in Phoenix and the soldier I've become here. Maybe you don't have to choose. Maybe you can be both. After dinner, Sarah returned to her room to start packing for her trip. As she folded her civilian clothes, she realized how little time she'd spent in non-military attire over the past year. Her wardrobe had become largely functional, comfortable clothes for off-duty hours and her dress uniforms for formal occasions. She held up the dress she planned to wear to Miguel's graduation party, a simple but elegant navy blue dress that her mother had sent for Christmas. It would be perfect for the celebration, dressy enough to show respect for the occasion, but not so formal as to make her family feel uncomfortable. As she packed, Sarah found herself thinking about the tattoo on her shoulder and what it would mean to her family to see it again. She'd gotten it during her leave after her father's funeral, but most of her relatives had only seen it briefly. In her military environment, tattoos were common and generally accepted as long as they met regulations. But she wondered how her extended family would view it, especially the older members who might have more traditional attitudes. The tattoo meant everything to her. It was her way of carrying her father's memory and her family's heritage with her wherever the army sent her. But she also knew that some people might not understand its significance, might see it as simply decoration or even as something inappropriate for a young woman. She decided that if anyone asked about it, she'd explain its meaning honestly. The tattoo was part of who she was now, and hiding it would feel like denying the journey that had brought her to this point in her life. Kim returned to their room around 2,100 hours, carrying a stack of medical journals and looking tired after a long day in the clinic. "How was your day?" Sarah asked. "Busy. We had a training accident during PT this morning. Nothing serious, just a sprained ankle. But it reminded me why I love working in medicine. Being able to help people when they're hurt or worried feels really meaningful." "I know what you mean. I felt something similar today when General Harrison complimented our mess hall operation. It made me realize that even routine work can make a difference in people's lives. Speaking of which, I heard through the medical staff grapevine that you had quite an encounter with the new post commander. Word travels fast around here. It always does. But seriously, that's exciting. General Harrison has a reputation for developing junior soldiers' careers. If he's noticed you, good things could be coming your way." As they prepared for bed, Sarah reflected on how much her life had changed since joining the army. She'd gone from being a young woman with limited options in Phoenix to a soldier with skills, experience, and now potentially new opportunities ahead of her. But she'd also maintained her connection to her roots, her family, and the values that had shaped her growing up. Tomorrow would be her last full day at Fort Braxton before leaving for Miguel's graduation. She wanted to make sure everything was perfect in the mess hall so that Sergeant Peterson wouldn't have to worry about anything while she was gone. It was a small gesture, but it reflected the sense of responsibility and teamwork that military service had instilled in her. As she set her alarm for another early morning, Sarah smiled at the thought of surprising Miguel at his graduation ceremony. He knew she was coming, but he didn't know she'd managed to get permission to wear her dress blue uniform to the ceremony. She couldn't wait to see his face when he spotted her in the audience, representing not just herself, but the family's pride in his achievement and the honor of military service. Friday morning arrived with unusual energy for Sarah. It was her last day at Fort Braxton before leaving for Miguel's graduation, and she wanted to ensure everything ran smoothly in her absence. She woke up 30 minutes earlier than usual, giving herself extra time to review the weekend meal plans with Sergeant Peterson and brief her replacement on the specific preferences of regular mess hall customers. The pre-dawn air was crisp as she walked to the mess hall, her breath visible in small clouds. Spring was finally giving way to early summer, and she could smell the honeysuckle that grew along the fence line near the enlisted quarters. In a few hours, she'd be breathing the dry desert air of Phoenix, hugging her family, and watching her little brother achieve something that had seemed impossible just a few years ago. "You're early, even for you," Corporal Stevens observed as Sarah entered the kitchen. He was just pulling the last batch of dinner rolls from the ovens, their golden brown surfaces gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Wanted to make sure everything's perfect before I leave. You know how Sergeant Peterson gets when his routine is disrupted." Stevens laughed. "The man runs this kitchen like a Swiss watch. But I think he appreciates having people who care as much as you do." Sarah began her morning prep work with extra attention to detail. She checked the temperature on all the warming stations twice, verified that the coffee urns were functioning properly, and made detailed notes about portion sizes and serving procedures for Specialist Morrison, who would be covering her position over the weekend. When Sergeant Peterson arrived at 0515, he found Sarah had already completed most of the breakfast setup and was reviewing inventory levels with the night shift supervisor. "Martinez, you know you don't get paid extra for coming in early," he said, but his tone was approving. "Just wanted to make sure Morrison has everything she needs, Sergeant. I've left detailed notes about the regular customers' preferences and the usual Friday morning rush patterns." Peterson nodded, scanning the notes Sarah had prepared. "This is excellent work. Morrison should have no problems with this level of preparation." As the breakfast service began, Sarah found herself paying closer attention to the interactions she usually took for granted. The way Private Rodriguez always asked for extra bacon with a shy smile. How Sergeant Major Williams preferred his eggs slightly runny, and always thanked her politely. The group of new recruits who still seemed intimidated by everything about military life, including asking for food. These small moments had become part of her daily routine, but seeing them with fresh eyes reminded her of why she enjoyed this work. Food was more than nutrition. It was comfort, routine, and sometimes the only familiar thing in a soldier's day. Around 0630, as the breakfast rush was winding down, Sarah noticed General Harrison entering the mess hall again. This time he was alone, dressed in his PT uniform like any other soldier getting breakfast after morning exercises. He moved through the serving line like a regular customer, making casual conversation with the kitchen staff. When he reached Sarah's station, he smiled in recognition. "Good morning again, soldier. How are you today?" "Very well, sir. Thank you for asking. I hear you're taking leave this weekend for a family graduation." "That's wonderful." Sarah was surprised he remembered their conversation from the day before, but she supposed attention to detail was probably one of the qualities that had made him a successful officer. "Yes, sir. My brother is graduating from high school. First in the family?" "Yes, sir. It's a big milestone for us." General Harrison nodded thoughtfully as Sarah served his breakfast. "You know, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. I'd like to schedule some time to talk with you more extensively when you return from leave. Would Monday afternoon work for you?" Sarah felt her heart rate increase. "Of course, sir. Whatever works with your schedule." "Excellent. Enjoy your weekend with your family. Those moments are precious." After the general left, Sarah found herself both excited and nervous about the upcoming meeting. What could he possibly want to discuss that required more than their brief conversation the day before? Sergeant Peterson approached her station as she was cleaning up after breakfast service. "I couldn't help but notice that General Harrison seems quite interested in you. That's the second day in a row he's made a point to speak with you. He mentioned wanting to meet with me when I get back from leave. I have no idea what it's about." "Well, whatever it is, you've obviously made a positive impression. Just be yourself. That's what got his attention in the first place." The rest of Sarah's shift passed quickly as she focused on preparation and training Morrison for the weekend coverage. By noon, she was changing out of her kitchen uniform for the last time before her leave, feeling a mixture of excitement and anticipation for the weekend ahead. Her flight to Phoenix departed at 1630 hours, giving her enough time to return to her barracks, grab her packed luggage, and catch the shuttle to the regional airport. As she walked across the base one last time before leaving, Sarah reflected on how much Fort Braxton had become home over the past 8 months. The flight to Phoenix was smooth, giving Sarah time to think about what she wanted to accomplish during her brief visit home. Beyond attending Miguel's graduation ceremony and the family celebration, she hoped to have some meaningful conversations with her parents about her military service and her future plans. The Phoenix airport felt familiar, yet different as she walked through the terminal in her travel uniform. The desert heat hit her as soon as she stepped outside, a dry warmth that was distinctly different from the humid climate of Fort Braxton. She'd forgotten how intense the Arizona sun could be. Miguel was waiting at the passenger pickup area, leaning against their mother's old Honda Civic with a huge grin on his face. He'd grown since Sarah had seen him last, taller, with broader shoulders, and more confidence in his posture. But his smile was exactly the same as it had been when he was a little boy waiting for her to come home from school. "Sarah," he rushed over and wrapped her in a bear hug that lifted her off the ground. "I can't believe you're actually here. You look so official in that uniform. Miguel, look at you. You're taller than me now. When did that happen?" "Sometime between your last visit and now. Mom's been feeding me like I'm going to join the army too." They laughed together as they loaded Sarah's luggage into the car. The drive through Phoenix revealed changes in the city, new developments, businesses that had opened or closed, neighborhoods that looked more prosperous or more run down than Sarah remembered. "Tell me about this girlfriend I'm going to meet," Sarah said as Miguel navigated the familiar streets toward their family's neighborhood. Miguel's face lit up with the kind of smile that told Sarah this was serious. "Her name is Rosa Delgado. We've been together for 6 months now. She's really smart. She got a scholarship to study nursing at the community college. And she's beautiful, Sarah. You're going to love her. What does she think about you having a sister in the army?" "She thinks it's amazing. Her cousin is a Marine, so she understands military life a little bit. She's actually kind of nervous about meeting you because she's heard so many stories about how tough you are." Sarah laughed. "Tough? Me? I work in a kitchen." "Yeah, but you're also a soldier who travels the world and serves her country. That's pretty impressive to a high school girl from our neighborhood." Their childhood home looked smaller than Sarah remembered, but it was exactly as she'd left it. The small front yard with her mother's carefully tended garden, the faded blue paint on the front door, and the American flag her father had hung from the porch the day Sarah left for basic training. Elena Martinez appeared on the front porch before they'd even parked, wiping her hands on her apron and calling out greetings in rapid Spanish. Sarah's homecoming was everything she'd hoped for. Warm embraces, the smell of her mother's cooking filling the house, and the comfortable chaos of a family reunited. "Mija, you're so thin. And look at this uniform, so professional. Your father would be so proud." Her mother held her at arm's length, studying every detail of Sarah's appearance with the intensity only a mother could muster. "I'm fine, Mama. They feed us well in the army. How are you feeling? How's your back?" "Better since Miguel got that job at the auto parts store. Having a little extra money makes everything easier." Sarah felt a surge of pride at hearing about Miguel's job. He'd always been responsible, but knowing he was contributing to the family's finances while still maintaining his grades showed real maturity. The house felt both familiar and strange. Everything was exactly where Sarah remembered it, but she noticed details that had escaped her attention before: how worn the furniture had become, the careful way her mother had arranged things to hide their age, the photos of Sarah in uniform that now occupied prominent places on every surface. "Rosa's coming for dinner tomorrow," Miguel announced as they sat around the kitchen table catching up. "She's bringing her famous Tres Leches cake." "Famous? It's famous now," Sarah teased. "In our graduating class, definitely. She makes it for every school celebration." Elena smiled at her son's obvious affection for his girlfriend. "She's a sweet girl, very respectful, and she helps her grandmother take care of her younger siblings. Good family values." As the evening progressed, Sarah found herself settling back into the rhythm of home life. She helped her mother prepare dinner, listened to Miguel practice his graduation speech, and shared stories about her life at Fort Braxton. She was careful not to mention General Harrison's interest in her career. There would be time for those conversations later, and she didn't want anything to overshadow Miguel's celebration. That night, sleeping in her childhood bedroom, Sarah stared at the ceiling and thought about the path that had brought her to this point. The room held so many memories: late nights studying for high school exams, planning her future while staring at college brochures the family couldn't afford, and the nervous excitement of her last night before leaving for basic training. The girl who had slept in this bed 2 years ago had big dreams, but limited options. The woman lying here now had skills, experience, and apparently the attention of a general who saw potential for even greater opportunities. But, more importantly, she had the satisfaction of knowing her sacrifices were paying off for the people she loved most. Saturday morning brought the controlled chaos of graduation day preparation. Elena had been cooking since dawn, filling the small kitchen with the aromas of carnitas, fresh tortillas, and Miguel's favorite dessert, flan made with her mother's recipe. Extended family members began arriving early in the afternoon, bringing food, decorations, and enough excitement to fill the modest house to capacity. Sarah wore her dress blues to the graduation ceremony, drawing admiring looks and respectful comments from family members and neighbors. Miguel beamed with pride as he introduced her to his classmates and teachers, and Sarah felt the weight of representing not just herself, but her family's hopes and dreams. The graduation ceremony was held at the high school's football stadium, with nearly 300 graduates processing across the stage to receive their diplomas. When Miguel's name was called, Sarah felt tears she hadn't expected burning her eyes. Her little brother, the boy she'd helped with homework and protected from neighborhood bullies, was now a young man ready to begin his own journey toward independence and success. Miguel Rodriguez Martinez, the principal announced, and Sarah watched her brother stride confidently across the stage, his mortarboard slightly askew and his grin visible even from their seats in the bleachers. "Mijo," Elena called out, her voice carrying over the applause as Miguel held up his diploma in triumph. At the family celebration that evening, Sarah found herself in the role she'd always occupied at home, the responsible older sister, the one people looked to for advice and encouragement. Relatives asked about her military service, her travels, and her plans for the future. She answered their questions with the confidence military life had taught her, but she was also careful to keep the focus on Miguel and his achievement. Rosa Delgado proved to be exactly as Miguel had described, intelligent, kind, and clearly devoted to him. She was also curious about Sarah's military experience, asking thoughtful questions about life on base and what it was like to serve alongside people from different backgrounds. "Miguel talks about you all the time," Rosa confided during a quiet moment on the back porch. "He says you're his hero, the person who showed him that big dreams were possible even when money was tight." "He's always been special," Sarah replied. "I just tried to encourage him to see his own potential." "Well, it worked. He's planning to study automotive technology, but he's also talking about maybe joining the Army National Guard while he's in college. He says if it was good enough for his sister, it's worth considering." The comment surprised Sarah. Miguel had never mentioned military service as a possibility, but she could see how it might appeal to him. The National Guard would allow him to serve part-time while pursuing his education, and it could provide additional financial support for college. As the evening wound down and family members began heading home, Sarah found herself alone with her parents in the kitchen, helping to clean up the celebration dishes. "Mija, you seem different," her mother observed as they worked side by side at the sink. "More confident, but also more serious. Military life has changed you." "I hope it's changed me for the better." "It has," her father's brother, Uncle Carlos, said from the doorway. "You carry yourself like a leader now. Your father would be proud of the woman you've become." The mention of her father brought a familiar ache to Sarah's chest. He'd been gone for 2 years now, but she still found herself wanting to share important moments with him. She touched the place on her shoulder where her tattoo lay hidden beneath her dress uniform, drawing strength from the connection it represented. "He is proud," she said quietly. "I carry him with me wherever I go." As the house grew quiet and the family settled in for the night, Sarah found herself thinking about General Harrison's upcoming meeting and what it might mean for her future. Whatever opportunities he had in mind, she knew she'd consider them carefully, weighing the potential benefits against her commitment to her family and her desire to serve with purpose. But for now, in this moment, surrounded by the people who had shaped her and watching her brother begin his own journey toward success, Sarah felt complete. Tomorrow she'd return to Fort Braxton and whatever the future might hold. But tonight she was exactly where she belonged. Sunday evening arrived too quickly for Sarah's liking. The weekend with her family had been everything she'd hoped for and more, but now she faced the reality of returning to Fort Braxton and the uncertainty of whatever General Harrison wanted to discuss with her on Monday afternoon. Miguel drove her to the airport, their conversation during the drive focusing on his plans for the summer before college started. He'd been accepted into a summer internship program at a local automotive repair shop, which would give him hands-on experience to complement his classroom learning in the fall. "I've been thinking about what Rosa mentioned last night," Sarah said as they waited in the departure area. "About you considering the National Guard." Miguel's expression grew serious. "I wasn't sure how you'd feel about it. I know military life isn't easy. It's not easy, but it's been good for me. It's given me direction, skills, and opportunities one never would have had otherwise." But it's also a serious commitment. You need to understand what you'd be getting into. I want to serve something bigger than myself, like you do. And the educational benefits would help with college costs. Sarah studied her brother's face, seeing the same determination that had driven him to graduate despite their family's financial struggles. If you're serious about it, do your research. Talk to recruiters from different branches, understand the commitment you'd be making, and make sure it fits with your educational goals. Will you help me figure it out? Of course. Just promise me you won't make any quick decisions. Take time to really think it through. The flight back to Fort Braxton gave Sarah time to process the weekend and prepare mentally for whatever lay ahead. Seeing Miguel graduate and spending time with her family had reminded her of why her military service mattered, not just for her own growth, but for the opportunities it created for the people she loved. As the plane descended toward the regional airport near Fort Braxton, Sarah felt the familiar transition from civilian daughter and sister back to soldier. It wasn't that she was a different person in each role, but the military environment required a different kind of focus and awareness. Kim was reading in their room when Sarah returned to the barracks around 2,200 hours. How was the graduation? I want to hear everything. Sarah spent the next hour sharing stories from the weekend, Miguel's speech, Rose's tres leches cake, the pride on her mother's face, and the way her extended family had celebrated not just Miguel's graduation, but Sarah's military service as well. It sounds perfect, Kim said when Sarah finished. I'm so happy it went well. Are you nervous about your meeting with General Harrison tomorrow? Terrified would be more accurate. I have no idea what he wants to discuss. Whatever it is, just be yourself. That's what got his attention in the first place. Sarah set her alarm for 0400, wanting to ensure she had plenty of time to prepare for both her regular duties and the afternoon meeting with the general. Sleep came fitfully, with her mind cycling between memories of the weekend and speculation about what the next day might bring. Monday morning in the mess hall felt both familiar and different. Specialist Morrison had done an excellent job covering Sarah's position over the weekend, but it felt good to be back in her regular routine. Sergeant Peterson greeted her with his typical understated approval. How was the graduation? Perfect, Sergeant. Thank you for making the leave possible. Family comes first. How did Morrison do? She left everything in perfect order. I couldn't have asked for better coverage. Peterson nodded, filing away the information for Morrison's next performance evaluation. By the way, you have an appointment with General Harrison at 1,400 hours today. His aide called this morning to confirm. Sarah felt her stomach tighten with nerves. Did they say what it was regarding? Just that the general wanted to speak with you. You'll report to his office in Building 300. The morning breakfast service passed in a blur of familiar motions and conversations, but Sarah found herself more distracted than usual. Several soldiers commented on her weekend trip, and she appreciated their interest in her family's celebration, but her mind kept drifting to the upcoming meeting. At 1,345 hours, Sarah reported to Building 300, the post headquarters where the general's office was located. The building had an imposing formality that was different from the functional simplicity of the mess hall. Marble floors, portraits of distinguished military leaders, and the quiet efficiency of administrative personnel created an atmosphere of serious business. General Harrison's aide, a crisp young captain, escorted Sarah to a comfortable office that reflected the general's personality, professional but approachable, with photos of soldiers and military operations mixed with family pictures and books on leadership and military history. Specialist Martinez, please have a seat, General Harrison said, rising from behind his desk to shake her hand. Thank you for coming in. How was your family graduation? Wonderful, sir. It was exactly what I'd hoped it would be. I'm glad to hear that. Family milestones are important, especially when military service keeps us away from home so much. The general returned to his seat and opened a file folder on his desk. I've been reviewing your personnel records, and I have to say, I'm impressed. Excellent performance ratings, positive feedback from supervisors, and you've clearly adapted well to different assignments. Thank you, sir. Tell me about your transition from communications to food service. That must have been challenging. Sarah thought carefully about how to answer. Initially, I was disappointed about the transfer. Communications work was technically challenging, and I enjoyed it. But I've learned that serving in the mess hall is important work too. Ensuring that soldiers get quality meals affects morale, health, and readiness. That's exactly the kind of perspective I was hoping to hear. You understand that every job in the military serves a larger purpose. General Harrison leaned back in his chair, studying Sarah with the same attention to detail she'd noticed during his mess hall visits. I'm going to be direct with you, Specialist Martinez. I see leadership potential in you that isn't being fully developed in your current position. You handle pressure well, you communicate effectively, and you understand the importance of taking care of soldiers. Those are exactly the qualities I need in my staff. Sarah felt her heart rate increase. Your staff, sir? I'm offering you a position as my aide-de-camp. It would mean an immediate promotion to sergeant, specialized training, and exposure to high-level military operations and decision-making. It's challenging work, but it's also an opportunity for rapid career advancement. The offer was completely unexpected. Sarah had prepared for various possibilities, but working directly for the post commander had never occurred to her. Sir, that's an incredible opportunity. May I ask why you're considering me for such an important position? Good question. I need someone who understands soldiers at the basic level, their concerns, their needs, what affects their daily lives. You have that understanding because you've lived it. I also need someone who can maintain professionalism under pressure while remaining approachable and genuine. You demonstrated those qualities during my mess hall visits. General Harrison pulled a document from the folder and handed it to Sarah. This is a detailed job description and training timeline. The position would require additional schooling, leadership development courses, administrative training, and security clearance upgrades. You'd essentially be my liaison with the enlisted personnel on this post, helping me understand their perspective on policies and programs. Sarah scanned the document, her mind racing through the implications. The position would be a significant step forward in her military career, but it would also mean leaving the mess hall work she'd grown to appreciate and taking on responsibilities she'd never imagined. Sir, may I ask about the timeline for this decision? I'd like an answer by Friday. That would allow time for the paperwork to be processed and training to begin within the next month. I understand it's a big decision, and I want you to think it through carefully. What would happen to my current position in the mess hall? Sergeant Peterson would receive a replacement, probably someone from the current waiting list for food service assignments. Your departure would actually create an opportunity for another soldier. General Harrison closed the folder and looked directly at Sarah. I want to be clear about something. This offer is based on my assessment of your potential, not on any need to move you out of food service. If you prefer to remain where you are, that's perfectly acceptable and won't affect your career negatively. I appreciate that, sir. This is just much more than I expected. The best opportunities usually are. Take the time you need to consider it, discuss it with people whose opinions you trust, and make the decision that's right for you. As Sarah walked back to her barracks after the meeting, her mind was spinning with questions and possibilities. The promotion and increased responsibility were attractive, but she wondered if she was ready for such a significant change. Working directly for the post commander would mean being involved in decisions that affected thousands of soldiers, a responsibility that seemed overwhelming. She found Kim in their room, studying for an upcoming medical certification exam. How did it go? You look like you've seen a ghost. Sarah sat heavily on her bed and recounted the entire conversation, from the general's assessment of her potential to the details of the aide-de-camp position. Sarah, that's amazing. Do you realize what an opportunity this is? Most soldiers spend years trying to get that kind of career advancement. I know, but I'm terrified I'm not qualified for it. What do I know about high-level military operations? I serve breakfast and wash dishes. You do a lot more than that, and you know it. You understand how policies affect soldiers because you are a soldier. You're organized, reliable, and you care about doing good work. Those are exactly the qualities good leaders need. That evening, Sarah called her family to discuss the opportunity. Her mother's reaction was immediate pride mixed with concern about the increased responsibilities. Miguel was excited about his sister's potential promotion, asking detailed questions about what the job would involve. What does your heart tell you, Mija? Her mother asked near the end of their conversation. I'm scared, but I'm also excited. It's the kind of opportunity one never imagined was possible. Fear isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it means you're about to grow in ways you didn't expect. Over the next few days, Sarah found herself observing her work in the mess hall with new eyes. She noticed how soldiers' moods affected their interactions with the kitchen staff, how food quality and service speed influenced the overall atmosphere in the dining area, and how her own attitude could positively or negatively impact dozens of people each day. She also spent time researching the aide-de-camp position, reading about the responsibilities and career paths it could open. The job would involve everything from scheduling and correspondence to representing the general at meetings and ceremonies. It would require diplomacy, attention to detail, and the ability to communicate effectively with people at every level of the military hierarchy. On Wednesday evening, Sarah sought out Sergeant Peterson for advice. She found him in the mess hall office, reviewing the next week's meal plans and inventory reports. "Sergeant, could I speak with you about something confidential?" "Of course, Martinez. What's on your mind?" Sarah explained the general's offer and her uncertainty about whether to accept it. Peterson listened without interruption, occasionally nodding as she described her concerns and considerations. "Can I ask you something honestly?" Peterson said when she finished. "What do you enjoy most about working here?" "Taking care of soldiers, making sure they get good food, and feeling like I'm contributing to their welfare." "And what do you think General Harrison's aide does?" Sarah considered the question. "Takes care of the general so he can take care of all the soldiers on the base." "Exactly. It's the same mission, just at a different level." Peterson leaned back in his chair. "Martinez, I've seen a lot of soldiers come through this kitchen. Most do their jobs competently, but few bring the level of care and attention to detail that you do. Those qualities would serve you well in any position. Would you be disappointed if I left the kitchen? I'd miss having you here, but I'd be proud to see you advance your career. Good soldiers should be challenged and developed, not kept in comfortable positions just because they perform well." Thursday morning brought Sarah no closer to a decision. The rational part of her mind recognized the opportunity as a potential game-changer for her military career. But the emotional part worried about leaving work she understood and enjoyed for responsibilities that felt overwhelming. During the breakfast service, she found herself paying close attention to the interactions between soldiers and kitchen staff. A young private who seemed homesick brightened when Corporal Stevens asked about his family. A sergeant dealing with personal problems relaxed slightly when Sarah remembered his coffee preferences without being asked. These small moments of human connection had become important to Sarah, and she wondered if the aide position would provide similar opportunities to positively impact soldiers' lives. That afternoon, she received an unexpected visitor. Maria knocked on her barracks door with a serious expression that immediately caught Sarah's attention. "I heard through the grapevine about General Harrison's offer. I wanted to talk to you about something." They walked to a quiet area near the recreation center where they could speak privately. Maria seemed to be choosing her words carefully, which was unusual for her normally direct communication style. "I don't want to influence your decision, but I thought you should know something about General Harrison's reputation. He doesn't make offers like this lightly. He's known for identifying soldiers with leadership potential and helping them develop successful careers." "What do you mean?" "3 of his previous aides have been promoted to officer positions, and 2 others are now senior NCOs in important assignments. Working for him isn't just a job, it's an accelerated leadership development program." The information added another dimension to Sarah's consideration. If the position could lead to even greater opportunities for advancement, it might be worth the initial discomfort and uncertainty. Friday morning arrived with typical activity in the mess hall, but Sarah felt the weight of the decision deadline approaching. She had until 1700 hours to give General Harrison her answer, and she still wasn't entirely certain what that answer should be. As she served breakfast to the familiar faces of soldiers she'd grown to know over the past 8 months, Sarah realized she'd been thinking about the decision in the wrong way. She'd been focusing on what she might be giving up rather than what she might be able to accomplish. The tattoo on her shoulder reminded her daily to always move forward, to honor her father's memory by pursuing opportunities for growth and service. Perhaps this was exactly the kind of challenge he would have encouraged her to embrace. During her lunch break, Sarah made a phone call to Miguel. "I think I know what I want to do, but I need to hear it out loud first." "Tell me," her brother said simply. "I think I'm going to accept the position. It scares me, but it's also the kind of opportunity that could change everything, not just for me, but for our family. Dad always said you were the bravest person he knew. I think he'd want you to take the chance." At 1630 hours, Sarah reported to General Harrison's office with her decision. General Harrison looked up from his desk as Sarah entered his office, his expression expectant but patient. She had rehearsed this moment several times during the walk from her barracks, but now that she was here, the words seemed more significant than she had anticipated. "Sir, I've given your offer careful consideration, and I would be honored to accept the position as your aide-de-camp." A smile crossed the general's face, the first time Sarah had seen him display such obvious pleasure. "Outstanding. I was hoping that would be your decision, but I wanted to make sure you had time to think it through properly." "I did, sir. I also spoke with Sergeant Peterson, and He helped me understand that the mission is essentially the same, taking care of soldiers, just at a different level. Peterson's a wise man. He'll be sorry to lose you, but he understands the importance of developing talent. General Harrison pulled out a thick folder from his desk drawer. This contains all the paperwork for your promotion and transfer, as well as the training schedule for the next 6 weeks. Sarah accepted the folder, feeling the weight of it both literally and figuratively. When would I begin, sir? Monday morning, 0800 hours. That gives you the weekend to transition your duties in the mess hall and prepare for your new responsibilities. He paused, studying her expression. Are you having second thoughts? No, sir. Just trying to process how much my life is about to change. Change can be challenging, but it's also how we grow. I have confidence in your abilities, Specialist Martinez. Excuse me, Sergeant Martinez, as of Monday morning. The promotion still felt surreal to Sarah. In less than a week, she'd gone from serving breakfast in a mess hall to being selected for one of the most important enlisted positions on the base. Sir, may I ask what made you certain I was the right choice for this position? General Harrison leaned back in his chair, considering his response. Several things. Your professionalism under pressure, your genuine care for fellow soldiers, and something I observed during our first conversation. When I asked about your work, you didn't just describe your duties, you explained how they contributed to the mission. That kind of perspective is rare and valuable. He stood and walked to the window overlooking the parade ground where soldiers were conducting evening PT. But there was something else. When you rolled up your sleeves to refill the serving stations, I noticed a tattoo on your shoulder. It was only visible for a moment, but I could see enough to know it meant something significant to you. Sarah felt a moment of surprise. She hadn't realized the general had seen her tattoo during their brief interactions in the mess hall. Yes, sir. It's a tribute to my father and my heritage. I respect soldiers who understand where they come from and what they represent. That grounding in identity and values is essential for effective leadership. As Sarah left the general's office with her new assignment paperwork, she felt a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and profound gratitude. The weekend would be busy with transition preparations, but first she wanted to share the news with the people who had supported her journey to this point. Her first stop was the mess hall, where she found Sergeant Peterson completing the dinner service cleanup. The kitchen was quieter than usual, with most of the staff having finished their shifts for the day. Sergeant, I wanted to let you know that I accepted General Harrison's offer. Peterson stopped what he was doing and turned to face her, his expression showing both pride and genuine happiness. Congratulations, Martinez. You've earned this opportunity, and I know you'll represent the enlisted corps well in your new position. I wanted to thank you for everything you've taught me here. Working in your kitchen has been more meaningful than I expected when I first transferred in. You brought something special to this operation. The soldiers noticed it, and so did I. That's what got General Harrison's attention in the first place. They spent a few minutes discussing the transition plan for Monday. Peterson had already identified Sarah's replacement from the current waiting list, and he assured her that the change wouldn't disrupt the kitchen's operations. One more thing, Peterson said as Sarah prepared to leave. Don't forget where you came from. Your experience here, understanding how policies affect soldiers at the basic level, will make you a better aide than someone who's never worked outside the command structure. Sarah's next stop was Kim's room, where she found her roommates studying as usual. Kim's reaction was immediate excitement followed by rapid-fire questions about the new position's responsibilities and training requirements. This is incredible. Do you realize how competitive these aide positions are? Officers spend their entire careers hoping to work at this level. I'm trying not to think about that too much. It's intimidating enough already. You're going to be amazing at this. You have exactly the qualities General Harrison needs. You're organized, diplomatic, and you understand soldiers' perspectives because you've lived them. They talked late into the evening about practical matters like Sarah's new uniform requirements, the additional security clearance process, and how the change schedule would affect their room sharing arrangement. I'm going to miss having you here, Kim said as they prepared for bed. But I'm also excited to see where this opportunity leads you. Saturday morning brought a flood of congratulations from soldiers throughout the mess hall. Word of Sarah's promotion had spread quickly through the informal communication networks that existed in every military unit. The breakfast service took longer than usual as people stopped to offer good wishes and express their appreciation for her work in the kitchen. We're going to miss you, Sergeant Martinez, said Private Johnson, using her new rank for the first time. You always made sure we got a good meal and a friendly word. I'll still be on the base, Johnson. Just in a different role. Yeah, but now you'll be hanging out with generals instead of us regular soldiers. Sarah paused in her serving to look directly at Johnson. That's exactly why this position is important. I'll be able to represent the perspective of regular soldiers at the command level. Your concerns and needs will have a voice in those meetings. The comments seemed to resonate with Johnson and several other soldiers who had gathered around the serving station. Sarah realized that part of her new role would be maintaining these connections while operating at a higher level of responsibility. Sunday was spent in preparation activities, getting her dress uniforms ready for the more formal environment of the command staff, reviewing the orientation materials General Harrison had provided, and making arrangements for the transition of her personal items and room assignment. The A position came with quarters in the senior enlisted barracks, a single room that reflected her new status and responsibilities. As Sarah packed her belongings, she reflected on how much had changed since she'd first arrived at Fort Braxton 8 months earlier. She carefully wrapped the framed photo of Miguel's birthday party, thinking about how proud he would be when she told him about her promotion. The military benefits that would come with her new rank would also allow her to send more money home, potentially helping Miguel with his college expenses and providing additional security for her mother. Monday morning arrived with the crisp energy that Sarah had come to associate with new beginnings. She reported to General Harrison's office at 0800 sharp, wearing her dress uniform and carrying a notebook for taking detailed notes about her new responsibilities. The general's aide office was adjacent to his own, equipped with a computer system, telephone, filing cabinets, and a small conference table for meetings. Captain Williams, who had been serving as interim aide, spent the morning briefing Sarah on the daily routine and ongoing projects. The general keeps a very structured schedule, Captain Williams explained as they reviewed the appointment calendar. He believes in being accessible to soldiers at all levels, so you'll coordinate visits from everyone from battalion commanders to individual soldiers with concerns. Sarah's first official duty was to accompany General Harrison to a meeting with the post's senior non-commissioned officers. As they walked across the base to the conference room, the general provided context for the meeting and the issues that would be discussed. We're reviewing the effectiveness of our current training programs and looking for ways to better prepare soldiers for deployment. I want you to listen carefully to what the NCOs say about challenges they're seeing at the unit level. The meeting provided Sarah with her first glimpse into high-level military planning and decision-making. She took detailed notes as senior NCOs discussed everything from equipment shortages to soldier morale issues. The general asked probing questions and clearly valued the perspectives of these experienced enlisted leaders. Sergeant Martinez brings a unique perspective to our command staff, General Harrison announced near the end of the meeting. She's worked directly with soldiers at the basic level and understands their daily concerns. I encourage you to share your insights with her as we work to improve our programs. After the meeting, several of the senior NCOs approached Sarah to introduce themselves and express their appreciation for having an enlisted representative on the general's staff. It's about time we had someone in that office who understands what it's like to be in the field, said Sergeant Major Rodriguez, the senior enlisted advisor for one of the base's largest units. As the week progressed, Sarah began to understand the scope and importance of her new role. She coordinated meetings between the general and unit commanders, prepared briefing materials for senior staff meetings, and served as a liaison between the command staff and enlisted personnel throughout the base. One of her most important responsibilities was managing the general's calendar to ensure he maintained regular contact with soldiers at all levels. This included scheduling visits to training areas, mess halls, and barracks, as well as setting aside time for individual soldiers to bring concerns directly to the post commander. The key to effective command, General Harrison explained during one of their daily briefings, is staying connected to the people you're responsible for leading. Your job is to help me maintain that connection. Sarah found that her experience in the mess hall provided valuable context for understanding the issues brought to the general's attention. When a unit commander complained about soldier morale problems, Sarah could translate that into concrete terms about how it might affect everything from meal service participation to equipment maintenance. 2 weeks into her new position, Sarah faced her first major challenge. A family emergency involving one of the base's soldiers required coordination between multiple agencies and levels of command. The soldier's wife had been seriously injured in a car accident, and he needed emergency leave to return home and care for their children. Sarah worked with the Red Cross, the soldier's unit command, and the base legal office to expedite the necessary paperwork and ensure the soldier could depart as